welcome you all to the Vision Board, a knowledge platform. There's a joint initiative between BizAneKdotes and DataQuest. Our vision is to create a one-stop platform for young marketeer from SMB and the startup community to gain knowledge from the leaders across different domain, different business, and to support this community with the tools, insight, and inspiration. Those are required not only to grow personally, also to help them in the professional front. So today we are having Dhiraj Soni from Logitech. Welcome, Dhiraj.
Thank you so much, Arindam. Thank you so much for having me here.
So Dhiraj, thank you for your time, and join this initiative. And I'm sure that I know these young marketeers, those who are really going through this transition, they will, get to learn something great from you. So Dhiraj, my first question is that, you work with different segments, brands like Sony Ericsson, HP, now Logitech. So you have seen that, how marketing, there's a domain has evolved over a period of time. And especially in the current situation, that when everything is going digital. So how, what's your experience? What are the key areas those transformation is happening?
Sure, Arindam. So, traditionally, till a few years back itself, a typical consumer marketing plan entailed a TVC, print, radio, and an out-of-home to sustain visibility. And similarly, a customer marketing plan for an enterprise or an SMB campaign would revolve around presence in business magazines, events, seminars, roadshows. And the primary assumption for all this was that the customer journey is linear, that he or she actually moves from awareness to consideration to preference and eventually purchase in a linear manner. With the advent of digital, and especially in this pandemic period of about a year and a half, digital is no longer an add-on for a very long time. And in this 1.5 years, it has actually become the lead media. So the adoption of digital as a media has further accelerated many folds in the last 1.5 years. The other thing which is there is that most often earlier, brands used to talk to their consumers and customers. So it was brand talking their value proposition, whether it is in terms of communication or the product offerings. While today, it is actually consumers and customers speaking about the brands they use, they admire, and they want to be seen with. And that actually becoming a part of what the brands are amplifying in their communications. So what we put across as influencer marketing is actually gaining even further traction because of the authenticity and credibility that it brings to the table. And thirdly, I would say it is no longer about that traditional way of looking off above the line, below the line, online, offline, or roadshows, events, and seminars. It is actually become omni-channel and omnipresence. See, a lot of times Arindam, we talk in the context of saying always on marketing.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it is it's always on marketing because there is an always on customer. See, with the advent of digital and social media, you and me as consumers and customers can access information anytime, anywhere. With e-tail and e-com, both from brand and e-com marketplace perspective, enabling you to transact at any time, it is actually an always on customer, which is making the marketers look at opportunities which allow them to be always on.
Exactly.
Typically, the communication excites us, a conversation excites us, and we looking for the brand or the solution. And that is where performance marketing, where search comes into play, allows us to actually move the needle from discovering about searching for the product, discovering, knowing more, and then eventually making a purchase. So I think these are three fundamental shifts that I can envisage which have happened. And digital clearly from a media which was an add-on to a media which is essential to now the lead media is what has happened over a period of last couple of years.
This is special in India that, there's one more challenge the marketeer, most of the cases they face is that, if they're selling the product, which is across, the different region, And India is a very diverse in nature. That we have so many languages, so many culture, and especially when it comes to the the B2B side of the marketing, that different city has a different kind of the business or the vertical. That so what are the key factors that you think that one marketer should keep in mind whenever they're asked to create a strategy to sell their product or to market the product in multiple geography?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the diversity of India, and I would say we are a federation of 29 states rather than a single nation because of the diversity that exists across the shared width of the country. So fundamentally, Arindam, marketing is all about actually connecting with the customer and the consumer. So if you really ask me, it is like staging a performance, which emotionally and rationally moves the consumer. And for that to happen, it is the content which is essentially with what you are reaching out, what you want to say, and the context. So as to in what context are you reaching out to this potential customer or your consumer? And very importantly, the local relevance of that. Since you talked about the SMB perspective to this, now if you were to just look at taking this same conversation of content and context into the SMB space, it is about the vertical specific propositions, which appeal to a more region specific or even a state specific audience. An example being like Gujarat, right? I mean, you will have the diamond cutting business, which is big in Surat. You have textiles also, which is big. Now, if you are in that space, you need to look at communicating and engaging vertical specific solutions, not just propositions, I would say. It is more of vertical specific solution led engagement that you need to have. And there, if you can bring in a local partner itself, because what local is becoming important is from an SMB perspective, what is most critical for them is कि काम चलता रहना चाहिए. Irrespective of whatever products, services, offerings they are deploying in their businesses, their underlying requirement is that the work should not stop.
Yeah.
That can happen when you actually have a vertical specific solution with a local partner, and it is not a pure hardware solution, but it's a hardware software solution and even services solution. So I'm not saying just hardware software, but even services, which actually gives the SMB the space to focus on building the business.
Yeah, exactly. Very rightly said that, so when what we see that when it comes to B2C, that, when you define your audience like millennials, so millennials, maybe, they behave same across, that any city, but
rightly said.
But comes to the B2B side of the business, that, different vertical has a different need, that, and their challenges, they vary from, city to city, from business to business. So it's very, very important and message to the, those young marketeer, those are in a process and those are struggling to, devise their strategy, to create a multi-vertical kind of an approach. So one should, like, as you mentioned, one should keep in mind that, what exactly the requirement and create your narrative as per their needs. You've been instrumental to launch, there's so many award-winning campaigns. You spent 2 decades in the marketing space. Do you remember any of the campaign that, that you want to share with the audience, and where, that initially you faced certain challenges, how you, that overcome those challenges, and what is the final goal that you have achieved?
Sure. One particular campaign, honestly, which comes to mind and which has relevance both from a consumer perspective as well as, I would say, a startup perspective, was the Bend the Rules campaign with HP. And the entire genesis of that campaign was there was a product proof in terms of the brand promise being Bend the Rules. There was a manifestation of this promise in the product, which was we were just launching the Pavilion X360, which rotates complete as a device. So the product offering was delivering on the brand promise of Bend the Rules, literally. And we wanted to take it beyond that because there were other competitors who were already there in the market when we introduced this product. And we wanted to tap in to the startup buzz that was happening at that point of time. And this was in 2014 and 15. And we were fortunate that we were working with a brand ambassador at that point of time. And she herself in her life had actually shown what Bend the Rules was all about, moving from being a badminton player to a model to a film star, and then having her own fashion label also. And the entire thought for that campaign was big before 30, which was in a way a reflection of this generation, which did not want to pursue the conventional path to success of saying, okay, our fathers, grandfathers have grown from ABC to being a general manager to a VP of a company at about 50. This generation is more about creating success now and here. Or the clear proposition was appealing to a generation that wants to make it big before 30. And so while we had the communication on a broader platform, including television commercial, wherein the twist was that actually this celebrity brand ambassador of ours is actually a fan of a millennial who has moved from investment banking to baking. So that itself was a twist that, okay, the celebrity whom everyone otherwise looks up to, but the celebrity was looking up to this young millennial who had actually taken an unconventional path. But more importantly, I think where the challenge was, Arindam, to be very honest, was to figure out authentic stories of such instances which were happening in the market. And I think that is what was brought about beautifully with the digital and the social team by bringing out and getting hold of authentic stories. And in the process of those authentic stories, I distinctly remember there was a gentleman from Rajasthan, Vijay Singh Rajput, who was doing custom bikes. And each of these millennials was actually using technology to actually bend the rules of success. Whether it was Chayos, whether it was Chumma, those real life examples were brought to life, wherein technology had enabled these young millennials to start up and make it big before 30. And I think that is something which I personally very well enjoyed being a part of the campaign. And that had a significant impact on the brand connect with the young millennials, as well as impacted the business.
Yeah. And in fact, that was I think, as far as I remember, the band, the rules, the time frame, it was I think, that during the time that so many startups, they were, coming up in India in space, not like current, situation. Yeah. And definitely, those, the budding entrepreneur, they're looking for this kind of stories that, how, they can, achieve their goal, what are the, best practices, learnings they can learn from their peers, and, start their journey into entrepreneurship. So now,
and that's where I would just like to point out, that's where the context that I said earlier, the context of the engagement and the communication is relevant. Yeah. So the rules at a time when there is a generation which is looking at actually making it big before 30.
Yes.
That context actually played a big role.
Yeah.
In the communication and the engagement of the brand with the young millennials that we wanted to reach out to.
Great. That. So now, Dhiraj, I'm going back to that our first question that when we talked about digital first pandemic. So now that one more challenge that we as a marketeer that are facing, that because everything is going digital, it's become very, very cluttered.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to to stand out with the message that you want to give to your audience, and especially that if I refer to again the SMB, pre-pandemic trade exhibition used to be one of the key platform to interact with the customer, to sell their product. But now due to the pandemic, the exhibition is stopped, and they're struggling how to go from offline to online, and how to digitize their overall marketing operation. So what's your thought, especially first thing is that how we can stand out in this clutter?
Yeah, so like we started off, yes, this pandemic accelerated the push towards digital for everyone. So not just SMBs, but consumer businesses, even enterprise businesses, because of this situation that we find ourselves in, it has accelerated the pace of digital adoption, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
So, it's a reality that yes, digital will form a bigger chunk of even the business transaction proportion going further. Now that we have experienced digital in this 1.5 years. Coming back to the story of SMBs, because they have been very tuned to the offline ways of marketing, trade shows, road shows, and exhibitions and all. I think you still need to step back and look at the basics of building your plans, which is to go back and say, who is your audience? Define them as much as you can. Where can you reach these across platforms? And when I say across platforms, it should be omni-channel platforms. It is not purely digital. As and when opportunities emerge of having presence in offline, you would have presence in offline. But in present scenario, maybe look at more digital platforms. What is your proposition for them? And lastly, how best you can actually make them appreciate your offering. So the starting point, Arindam, still remains defining who your audience is, and as much as in detail you can do. Then fundamentally be very clear of your objective. I mean, if your objective is to drive awareness and consideration for a product or a service that you offer, reach within the audience becomes a key metric, and that too at a certain frequency, so that you can create impact and hence push the audience to act. Now, digital allows you to retarget based on response that different segments have given you. And you can actually build your content based on the kind of response you are getting, so that you can actually retarget the audience who responded to you in the first go to drive them down the funnel.
Yeah.
At the same time, what it gives you an opportunity, Arindam, is that you can expand your target customer base by mirroring the audience which has responded to you.
Yeah.
So it's a more of a audience first approach, which is the programmatic approach, where you build the audience who is most likely to respond to you. And at the same time, earlier, putting across one content piece for everyone is no longer that relevant or that impactful. You need to have content in different formats based on the platforms your audience is. It is not about creating one digital content piece and running it on every platform. It is adapting to the platform. Most often, videos are generating far greater response.
Exactly.
But fundamentally, I would say most importantly, the biggest transition that everyone has to make and is making in some or the other way, I think, is irrespective of the objective and the results. Build your own database of consumers, customers, and potential customers, and keep refining them with every campaign that you do. Because this is what digital allows you to do very effectively and very efficiently at relatively lower costs. These SMBs would realize that over a period of time, if I were to put it more responsive and a reliable customer database, that can help you jumpstart as and when you have a new initiative again. And that is something which is still evolving.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a very important point that you mentioned, though, that like when we, interact with the SMBs, the one major challenge, what we realize that, over a period of time, they must have gathered the, customer information database, but those are not structured in a place that now when suddenly the pandemic hit in the market and they, they're required to go digital. So they don't have that understanding that whom to target, which stage their customer into. So I think this pandemic is also learning for, this Indian SMB that it's a right time, to use the, that invest on the technology part. Digital transformation is very, very important. So there was a time when digital transformation was just a buzz. Everyone used to talk about it, but hardly people to invest. But this pandemic, we can see that at least the SMB, they're realizing the need. They're investing in technology. But when it comes to the marketing, like, that you mentioned that, though you'll be using the technology, but one thing that, we feel that marketer, they should keep in mind that, what content, what narrative they're using, because technology is just an enabler. But
Exactly.
end of the day, you are interacting with a human being.
Yeah.
So if you don't put across the right content, right narrative, maybe your process will be very agile, in the process level.
Yeah.
But maybe you won't get that right response from your customer. Now I will take this discussion into little that lighter side of the conversation. Like in the
Sure.
beginning, we mentioned that so there's a community of young marketeer. They're from startup and the SMBs. They really would like to that hear from the leader like you. Like if you want to hire, hypothetically you want to hire fresher or the that junior level marketeer in your organization. What are top 3 questions that you're going to ask to him?
Good one.
Yeah.
So since it's a fresher, I would possibly look at getting to know the person, he or she, much more. So it would be like, what does he or she enjoy the most, and what is the most frustrating for them? How do they deal with it? Second would be, how do they respond to feedback?
Yeah.
And the third would be, what does success look like for them?
Exactly.
So it's more about, if you ask me, checking out their aptitude, because whether it is, if you're getting actually into a startup, your ability to actually get your hands dirty at every stage, and your ability to take feedback both internal and from external potential customers, partners, vendors, and I would say if I would put it, a vicious cycle of excitement and frustration that you go in a day itself.
Yeah.
So well you can manage yourself in that scenario is what will be important.
Yeah, exactly. And that also that that when that our the students who are coming out of the management college, startup is a buzz.
Yes.
Now once is the startups, the unicorn who are approaching them to hire, at the same time that company like Microsoft or that IBM, they want to hire. So what do you suggest to those that those young that students who are basically on the verge of passing out of their MBA courses?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, to be very honest, Arindam, this can vary across individuals.
Yeah.
And it is, I think, the way I would look at is play to your strengths. Each individual would have their own preferences in terms of career and life, work styles, and if I may say so, the appetite for uncertainty.
Yes, exactly.
Having said that, I personally would encourage young marketers to actually be more exploratory in the first 5 to 6 years of their so the set of challenges, opportunities you get in a startup and a smaller company. See, that allows you to, at the same time, get your hands dirty day in and day out. And that gives you learnings. And at the same time, because of the small size of the startup or the company, you have access to the decision makers also. So you are exposed to in a way, the width and depth of the company functioning. Its functions, it's right from pure brass tack executions, which is daily rigor, to actually sitting in a discussion with the decision makers and saying which way the business is going. So the exposure is immense. And what you learn in these early stages would eventually help you, in my view, to become more of an appreciative and a humble leader as and when you reach and go there. So it's not only about the functional skill set, if I put it that way, but it is about the individual skill sets also. As an individual, you would evolve in a very different way versus, and no good or bad choices. It depends on individual's view of his or her life and career. Some are excited by the constantly changing direction, which changes possibly 3 or 4 times in a day. That excites you. Be a part of a startup, be a part of a small company, because that is what is going to happen. And you will learn to manage ambiguous situations and uncertainty far more maturely. You get into a structured setup, like a bigger organization, like an IBM, Microsoft, HP.
Yeah.
There, it is all set in.
Yeah.
You will follow the process and you'll keep doing it.
Exactly.
Nothing right or wrong about it.
Yeah.
But personally, if you ask me, I would encourage people to be a little more exploratory in the first 5 years of their career.
Because no, everything is very dynamic in nature. Everything is changing. Those days are gone that, you're applying the same approach, taking the same approach and strategy for years. So every next quarter, the new challenges coming up in front of market here. Okay, great. So, my last question, that to your previous context, that what advice that you'd give to 24 years old Dhiraj Soni that were about to start his career and, they don't know which, the path to take, what to do with his life. And, but if you just, the think back, that, so what advice that you would give?
See, I think on hindsight, yes, I can give that advice. Today, when I look back, on hindsight, I think it's okay to be not sure of things. So be comfortable, and even if you are exploring multiple things, that's okay. And more importantly, Arindam, what I would say is, whatever you want to pursue, make choices that allow you to be you.
Yeah.
Build on your strengths.
Exactly.
Irrespective of whether it's your career, your life choices, build on your strengths.
Yeah.
And accept your weaknesses. You would find the time or the inclination in your journey as you begin your life that some weaknesses you might choose to work upon at some stage in life.
Yeah.
That's your choice. It's okay. And some you can just leave behind. So fundamentally, I personally feel that I would have loved to focus more on my strengths and build my career and life on that.
Exactly. Yeah. That's very, very, that I would say an important suggestion to those, the young marketeer that who walked on to their weakness, rather focusing on the strengths, which they can work upon and definitely, that achieve the, that created goal that they've set for their, the career.
Yeah. So the context I was looking at, Arindam, here is that today, business analyst and data analytics is the buzzword, right?
Yeah.
Now, but if you as an individual are not very comfortable with numbers, you would not enjoy that. Succeed in doing the particular courses, the curriculum, and end up being a business analyst in a fancy MNC or consulting firm. You would actually be pushing yourself, and much rather if you possibly are a little more on the creative side of it and want to build a career in communication, advertising, or even design per se, you would possibly enjoy being in that space far more, and you will be far more successful because you're actually in it because you want to do it.
So now we are at the end of our, the conversation, and I'm sure that, that audience, they really, get to learn the real life experiences, that from leaders like you. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arindam.
For joining this conversation. And have a nice day.
Thank you so much, Arindam. Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.